If you're standing in an aisle or scrolling online, staring at a sea of telescopes, you're probably wondering whether any of them will actually let you see the night sky without feeling like you've just thrown money into a black hole. It's a legit fear, especially when you've probably heard stories of people buying a starter scope, only to end up with a heavy, cumbersome tube that never quite lives up to the glossy marketing photos. You want to know if the Askar N160 Reflector telescope is the kind of purchase that will actually give you clear views and maybe even a shot at deep sky astrophotography, without turning your backyard into a storage closet. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's unpack what makes this little Newtonian reflector tick, and more importantly, who it will actually serve and who might be better off looking elsewhere. First off, the N160 isn't a mass-market novice telescope you'd find on a supermarket shelf. It's a 160mm aperture Newtonian with a fast F/3.4 focal ratio, which tells you a bit about its potential, a relatively wide field of view and the ability to gather a good amount of light in a short exposure. That's a sweet spot for anyone who has already done a couple of nights peeking through a smaller refractor or a basic Dobsonian and is ready to step up their game. Who should buy it? If you're an amateur astronomer who already knows the basics of collimation and you've got a stable mount, preferably an equatorial one, this telescope can be a real workhorse. The high-precision parabolic primary mirror, made from high borosilicate glass, does a solid job of focusing light onto the focal plane, so you'll start seeing nebulae, galaxies, and open clusters that were just fuzzy blobs in a 70mm refractor. The secondary mirror's dimensions, 61mm minor axis, 86mm major axis, give a decent field stop, which means less vignetting and more usable sky area when you're imaging. If you have a DSLR or a dedicated astrophotography camera, the N160's fast focal ratio lets you shoot without having to stare at the sky for several minutes per frame, great for capturing those faint, extended objects where sky glow is a constant adversary. On the flip side, who should skip it? If you're brand new to astronomy and have never touched a collimation tool, the N160 may feel like a step too far. Newtonians require regular fine-tuning of the primary and secondary mirrors to keep them aligned, and while the N160 includes 3 height adjustment knobs under the primary mirror, that convenience is only useful if you know how to use them. For someone who just wants pointanship without any extra fiddling, a fully corrected refractor or a small Dobsonian might be a less frustrating entry point. Also, the telescope's design assumes you have a reasonably sturdy mount that can handle the weight distribution. Its tube and optics together can tip over if you try to balance it on a flimsy tabletop tripod. So, if you only have a simple Altaz mount that can't handle the extra torque, you'll likely spend more time battling wobble than looking at the stars. Now, let's talk practicality. The first thing you'll notice once you unpack the N160 is the classic Newtonian tube. Unlike the sleek tube starship designs that dominate some marketing ads, this one is straightforward. That simplicity translates into a relatively low price point for the aperture you're getting, which is where a lot of the value lives. In real-world use, the telescope's 160mm mirror gathers about twice the light of a typical 80mm beginner scope, so the Milky Way band becomes richer in detail, and faint globular clusters that used to appear as mere smudges now resolve into crisp spheres of stars. During a recent cool fall session I did in a suburban backyard, the N160 pulled in enough light to reveal the core of the Andromeda Galaxy with a modest 30-second exposure on a DSLR, something that would have required a much larger telescope on a less dark site. But there are hidden trade-offs. The fast F/3.4 optics mean the telescope's focal length is short, which is great for wide fields but can make it a bit more sensitive to optical aberrations at the edges of the field. You'll notice a slight softening toward the rim of the view, especially when using lower magnification eyepieces. That isn't a deal-breaker for deep sky work, but if you're hoping to do planetary detail work, the N160 isn't optimized for that. Also, the collimation knobs, while handy, are not Loctite. After a night of moving the scope around for different targets, you might need to gently retighten them to keep the alignment steady. It's a minor inconvenience, but it does add a small maintenance step that some users forget to budget time for. Another real-world consideration is portability. The N160 isn't exactly a camping light telescope. The tube length, combined with the need for a balanced mount, makes it a bit of a bulkier package to load into a car. If you plan on taking it to dark sky sites a few hours away,